Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of A to Z of Python. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Itertools. Itertools is a list of functions basically that can create iterable items and really helps when you're trying to navigate through sets of data and you want to do some pretty handy stuff with it. Now, Itertools has changed a little bit from Python 2 to 3, and some of the functions are now standard global functions, and we'll talk about that too. But there's some pretty cool stuff you can do, and let's just kind of jump right into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is do from Itertools import star. So we're just going to import everything. We're going to use a handful of the functions, not all of them, but we'll just go ahead and import everything just to have it there. And I'm going to start out with a series of lists. We've got integers, and we've got some other stuff here. We've got some strings, and then we've got like character strings here too. Just a variety of stuff, so you can see when we're mashing them together or iterating through them what the results are. So we can get a couple of different things. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what's called the chain function. Chains are pretty cool. They group multiple lists together into one group. So we can say group, there we go. As usual, I can't type, but that's okay. So let's try it out. So the thing to remember in Itertools is that the result of whatever you do is a generator function. And I think, yeah, I've done a video on that previously in the series on letter G. So if you're not familiar with how generators work, the short end of it is they don't execute the function until they're iterated over, and they return one result at a time. So you have to kind of loop through them to spit all the values out or listify them in a list bracket. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's just kind of squish all of these three lists into one big list, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So you can do for I in chain ABC, print that out, and there you go. So you can see what it's done is it's combined the contents of all of them into one. Now, the way this works is it's spitting out the results of the chain function one time for each time we iterate through the list. Now, you can force a generator to print all at once by making the results inside of a list. And so that would look something like this. So print list chain ABC. So let's give that a shot. There you go. So what this does, this list will execute the entire chain and then print them as a list. It kind of iterates through the generator all the way through the list and gives you one nice handy list. So this would be great for assigning to a variable or maybe passing on somewhere when you want to get them all back at once. So you can do a lot of stuff in one string here, or like we did before, you can iterate over them as you want, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through as far as you want. The chain is pretty handy because it does kind of squeeze all these together. It's a really simple way to join lists. Now you can modify this with some ranges here. So if I put like maybe 1 and 1 and maybe 0 to 2, this will do exactly what you think. It's going to chain together these elements. So we run this. So we're getting the first element, and the first and second element. So this is the way this math works is just like like a range pretty much. So these can be modified in any way that you want. You can even go, if you move this over, this is like 1 to the end of the list instead of the beginning of the list to the first item. So we can run that, and you'll see that we get, actually you can make this 0 if we want the whole thing. There you go. So that's a way to get from the 0th element to all the way up to the end, and then just take the first one and take the first and second one. So that's pretty cool. That's about all you need to know about chain. Pretty straightforward stuff. There's another one called count, which, you know, there are times when you would want to use count if you're generating a range of numbers, like you need to find the first set of numbers that match some criteria, and you can create sort of a range or a count and iterate through it until you get the amount that you need. So like, give me every even number up until 100, you know, so the count will just keep spitting out those numbers until you tell it to stop. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to show you that it does kind of spit back an infinite amount of numbers. So if you're not careful, you'll blow things up. So let's give that a shot. For I and count, and the first parameter is the starting point, as you see here, and the second parameter is the step. So we might want to step by 0.5. So start at 1, and we'll get it'll be 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and it'll just keep spitting those out for us. And then we can just do print I. Now, what's going to happen here is it's going to print an infinite number of results. So you can see that it's doing exactly what we asked it to, printing, you know, every number incremented by 0.5. But it's a bit unwieldy because it just never stops. So there is a way to fix that. I use something called iSlice. iSlice is pretty cool. This is probably one of the more powerful ones. iSlice allows you to get a range of numbers, so you can specify a start and a stop point and everything else. So let me give you an idea. So we can do for I in iSlice count starting at 0 through 100. So you use 101 because it's going to stop at 100. And count by 5s, print I, and there you go. So we get everything from 0 to 100 by 5s. And essentially what iSlice is doing is it's allowing us to specify a start and a stop point. And count is just used to spit out the numbers one after another. So used in conjunction, they're pretty powerful. So if you want to generate a list of numbers with the specific criteria, you can use this little snippet of code to fill up a list if you wanted to, or print out a bunch of numbers in sequence that are kind of any sort of step that you want and any range that you want. So that's really pretty cool. So let's see what else we can do. Let's talk about compress. Compress is pretty neat if you have a list of values and you only want to return certain ones. So you can use essentially what's like a binary filter. Now, to explain what that means, let's create the binary filter. So I'm just going to call it binary filter. You can call it whatever you want, doesn't matter. And we'll make it equal to, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we have 10 variables in there. These are integers of 0 or 1, and the reason it's done this way is because in binary, this is going to represent false or off, and this will represent true or on. And what compress will do is it will take this list and compare it to another list and return a list of numbers where if it's a 1 in your binary filter, it'll return that number. If it's a 0, it'll skip past it, and if it's a 1, it will return that number again. So hopefully with a filter like this, if we compress A and the binary filter, we'll actually get 0 and 9, or the first and the last item in this list. So let's give that a shot. So we pass the first list to be iterated over, or to be compared with, and then we do the filter, and we'll print that out. And we get the first and the last, which is pretty sweet. You could also do something like print list and you can get them in a list, so you could assign this to something like that, you know, and then print out A. So if you want to manipulate the list later on, you could do that. So as you see here, this is really helpful when you have, like, let's say you have a list of lists, and you have a bunch of numbers in there, and you want to get the values returned based on certain configuration parameters, like you want the first and the last age in a list of ages, and you have 20 groups of people, 10 person per group, so 10 different ages, 20 different sets of that, and you want to get the oldest and the youngest person. You could run this, something like this, to get the first and the last value and run it over the entire set of lists and get back just a list of the oldest and youngest, or whatever you want to do. So the possibilities are pretty endless, but this is cool. So kind of like a bitwise operator type thing. If you looked at that video, this will make perfect sense. So what else do we have? Well, there used to be a function called IFilter, and there used to be a function called IMAP, and that was in Python 2. But in Python 3, I guess they're just so darn helpful that they've made them a global function. So you don't actually need Itertools imported for these next two, but because they're really pretty cool, I'm going to pitch them under the Itertools video, because a lot of the documentation that you'll still see, the older stuff, if you search for Itertools, you're going to see people talking about IFilter and IMAP. And you need to know that they're no longer called IFilter or IMAP. They're just called filter and map, and they're basic functions within Python. So let's talk about them, because they're pretty cool. So let's look at the integer list A that we have here and start doing some stuff to it. So let's say I want to return just the even numbers. Well, the way that I would normally do that is just to use generator and make it a list. So if I bracket out this generator function, I'm going to get a list return. So I can do x for x in A if x mod 2 equals 0. So you should know, hopefully, that this is a check for an even number. So it divides the number by 2, and if the remainder is 0, it returns the remainder. If the remainder is 0, then that means it's an even number. So if I print this, evens, there we go, I get back just the even numbers. Okay, so this is something that we covered in the generator video, how to spit out a list of stuff by doing a generator function that kind of executes all at once. But what if we want to get the odds? Well, that's a little trickier, but you can do it, and you can do it with the filter function. So let's do one called odds, and we're going to write one line of code here, and it will seem sort of similar, but we're just going to do list because we want to get it back in a list format just like we did with the generator function. But remember, with these Itertool type things, you got to just put in a list. So we're going to do that, and we're going to use filter. So not IFilter anymore. If you're using Python 2.7, you'll still use IFilter, but if you're using, hopefully you're using Python 3, and you just use filter. And it's going to ask for the function and the iterable being the list of numbers. So we can type in either a function name that we've previously defined, or in this case we're going to use a lambda function, which is essentially just a function that's not defined anywhere, but you can call it whenever you want. So we're going to do lambda x mod 2 a, and we'll print the odds, and let's see what happens here. Okay, so we got our odd numbers. So don't worry if you're not sure what the heck just happened. It is a little confusing, but the way filter works is it's using a true or false filter. Okay, so what happens is filter returns the value if the result of the function is true, or 1 in this case, and it does not return a value if the result of the function is 0. So what happens is if we do x mod 2 on an even number, so 0 to 4, like say take 4, x mod 2 for 4 is 4 mod 2, which is an even number, so it returns 0, and 0 in the filter case is false, so it will not give you that number back. It'll just skip right past it. But when we run x mod 2 on odd numbers like 1, 3, 5, and so on, the remainder is 1 for x, 5 mod 2, the remainder that's returned is 1, okay, for every odd number. And so that, in a binary sense, 1 would be true or on, and you will get that number back. So this does essentially the exact opposite of what this does, even though they look quite similar, using the same functions, just the treatment's different. This returns the ones that are equal to 0, and this returns the ones that are equal to true or 1. Okay, so that's an interesting way to use filter to return odd numbers out of a list, and you could just use this basic generator function to return even numbers. So that's pretty cool. At least I thought. The last one we're going to talk about here is map. And map, again, it used to be IMAP. It used to be part of Itertools, but now it's not. It's just a built-in function within Python. And what map does is it takes a function, and then it takes a list of numbers, like A, we'll use that again, and it runs each item through. So instead of creating a for loop that says, for item in A, do function with item, so like we could do for item in A, print, like, so if we had defined my function up here, like and we did and this is, yeah, and we did return x squared. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to do this on the fly here. So what we've done is we've created a function called myFunction, which takes in an integer value and squares it and returns that. So for each item in A, so we're going to go one by one, we're going to print out the return of myFunction. So this theoretically should, nope. Let's see. That's not working. So What did we do wrong? Oh, because I'm an idiot. There we go. Sorry, brain wasn't working there. There we go. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to just square a bunch of numbers, or square these numbers in this list, but you can do it a little bit more efficiently with the map. So one way we could do this is we could say for I in map square, that's the name of our function, or no, it's called my function, and A is the iterator, print I, and let's see what happens. Okay, so what's happening here is it's taking my function. You notice that the little brackets are missing here. Okay, so you don't put the little parentheses in there. I mean, it's taking my function, and the map means for each item in A, pass it through and get us the result. So we've got these like two little lines of code that essentially iterate over the list, performing the function and printing the value. Now, we can take all of this code and essentially get it down into just two lines. If we were to do for I in map, we use lambda again. We're going to cover lambda in a future video probably because it's pretty cool. But we can, hopefully if you kind of grasp what's going on here. And if we get rid of this and run this, there you go. So same results, way less code, right? So for each item in map lambda x squared, so this is our function. Okay, it's basically x squared for x, and A is the iterator. So it's taking each value, doing this, and assigning it to I, more or less, and then we can print that out. So that's how map works. And map's pretty cool, especially with the lambda, because you can kind of create a function on the fly, pass a bunch of variables through it. Now these can be kind of nested in, like count, or islice count. So you could do like a count, islice count, to get a range of numbers from 1 to 100 and get every third number, and then run the lambda function on that. You can nest them in any way that you want to, but there's more functions in Itertools that you can use, but these are some of the really cool ones, and hopefully this is enough to get you started. And if that is a good place to get going, I think we should stop there. So if you have any questions or anything you want to know or anything I should cover, let me know in the comments. Subscribe, of course, and thank